Hey, it's Hillary. Join me for a helpful and hopeful chat about mental health in our community. So grab a cup of coffee or tea. This is Wedgwood's Coffee Break Conversation. I'm grateful to be having a coffee break with Andrea Keller and Katie Papke today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'd love for you both to introduce yourselves a bit.
I'm Katie Papke. I am a survivor of human trafficking. It's been just over 20 years since my experience. So that's a really long time for recovery, some community advocacy. I have many roles and hats within the community. I do a lot of trainings on anti-human trafficking, prevention, education work. I am a full-time therapist, social worker. One of my jobs is with the Department of Veteran Affairs. I lead a national anti-human trafficking committee. Another job is I'm a therapist, and I work with survivors of human trafficking and trauma and other violent crimes. Another job is that I'm an associate professor at Grand Valley State University in their social work department, and I am teach classes on domestic violence and human trafficking awareness, as well as homelessness. And on top of that, I am part of the Michigan Human Trafficking Commission. I have to think about those rules. I am the vice chair and the chair of the Victim Services Committee. I also serve on the West Michigan Human Trafficking Council with Andrea. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm also on the board of a nonprofit agency here in West Michigan called Sacred Beginnings Transitional Homes, and we serve victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation with transitional housing and nonstop shop things, other roles and different survivor advisory boards and councils across the nation. So I'm really excited to be here, part of this conversation. Thank you for having me.
I'm super grateful you're going to be here today and sharing all of your wonderful expertise. And thanks for sharing a little bit of your story with us.
Thanks.
Glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm Andrea Keller, and I am the anti-human trafficking coordinator here at Wedgwood. So I help run our VOCA grant, which helps provide different services for victims victims and survivors of human trafficking, and then do a lot of teaching out in the community, presentations, and a lot of community engagement as well, and serve, again, as Katie said, on the West Michigan Human Trafficking Coalition.
Wonderful. When this episode is released, we are in January, which is Human Trafficking Prevention Month, hence why we're all wearing blue today. That's the color of human trafficking awareness and prevention. And National Human Trafficking Awareness Day is also coming up soon. And something the two of you are pretty passionate based on all of your experience and work is human trafficking prevention and awareness. So let's start with talking about what human trafficking really is. I think when people hear the phrase human trafficking, many think it's this kind of sensationalized story. And it's a lot of things that people think are super common or true. But what are some of the common myths you are hearing in your advocacy and prevention work, and what does it really look like in our community?
You want me to go first?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because sensationalism, as you said, in the media is huge. And so, for example, in the movie Taken, right, they show a victim of human trafficking chained, held up against their will, right? But that is not always common. Sometimes the individuals who are being exploited for human trafficking are walking among us. We don't even know. They don't need to be chained up, because the power and influence of coercion, manipulation, being forced into what they're doing is so great that they are fearful of what might happen if they stop doing the trafficking work. And the trafficking work can be any form of labor. It can be individual servitude and in the home, domestic servitude it's called. And it can be sex work. A lot of people think automatically sex work, prostitution, right? Another myth is that, all sex workers are voluntary, but that's not true. There are so many sex workers in this country and internationally that if they have a pimp, that is a trafficker. That is an automatic form of human trafficking. And so some of the myths, too, is that it's not happening here in Western Michigan. It sure is.
Yeah.
Yes, it sure is. And, some of it just starts by grooming. Online grooming is the number one source nowadays of how somebody can be a victim of human trafficking. And it usually comes out as innocent, giving things that they want, helping others, thinking that they're signing up for a lucrative position and then fraudulently not getting involved. And then loneliness is a big factor, risk factor, vulnerability. And I hope to talk more about that later. But also the drug culture is highly interwoven. Homelessness is also another vulnerability to trafficking. And so in those situations, human trafficking, traffickers will exploit others based on those vulnerabilities. There's so many myths and facts, but Andrea, do you want to say some as well?
You covered a lot of the ones that I usually know. I love that you did. I think it's great because I was like, those are the ones. If I'm doing any sort of community engagement with people and trying to educate people on human trafficking, again, they have this big scary idea that it's people will come up to me and tell me this story that just happened in Grand Rapids of some child or woman getting kidnapped from the Meijer parking lot, right? And while those things may happen, like Katie said, it's a process of grooming and a lot of it's exploitation of vulnerabilities. And taking advantage of people and developing trust with people and then exploiting them later. So that's really what it's about. And I actually the study, the National Human Trafficking or National Survivor Study by the Polaris Project, if you're familiar with that.
I participated in that.
Okay.
I did.
So what I find fascinating about that study is, they, really looked at, what happened before, what happened during, and what, supports and services afterwards, right? And so what they looked at was vulnerabilities in childhood. And so if it's okay if I just share some of those statistics, because I think that's really important. Katie hit a lot of them, right? Of those vulnerabilities that even as children can experience at a young age. So they did the ACEs study, so the Adverse Childhood Experiences study with these survivors. And so they asked them about, their childhood experiences and trauma. 83% in their childhood experienced poverty. 69% had run away from home. 96% had experienced abuse, whether that was physical, emotional, or sexual abuse as a child. 93% had experienced either substance abuse and mental health challenges, or 93% had lived with someone who experienced substance abuse or mental health challenges. And then 96% had experienced either family or household instability. So that just kind of puts a perspective to what Katie was saying, just how real that is for just how many vulnerabilities can come from just traumatic childhood experiences.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about these vulnerabilities and what can lead to someone being trafficked or exploited, especially among youth. Like you've said with all of these stats, it's much more complex than just being in a grocery store parking lot by yourself at night in a rough neighborhood. That's trafficking, and the vulnerabilities that play into that are so much more complex. So what are some of the other vulnerabilities that maybe we haven't talked about yet that can impact somebody's likelihood to potentially be exploited?
Well, we talked about housing insecurity, homelessness, some of our LGBTQ plus youth not feeling accepted and wanted. And, boys and men can also be trafficked. That's one myth, that it's only women and little girls. And the majority of trafficked individuals are women and girls, but men and boys can also be trafficked, and they may identify as LGBTQ or not. And one thing is, leaving what you had mentioned, an unstable housing, alcoholism, fighting, domestic violence in the home, just wanting to get away from it. And then going into the streets or staying with friends and their family members, and they need a place to stay. Well, sometimes they're asked or forced to do things that they don't want to do anymore. And instead of saying no, they'll hold a little stick over their heads, right? To say, yes, you're going to do these things or you're going to lose your housing. Another thing is like, especially with youth, is easy money, right? So a lot of children and youth, they don't have the skills to work, right? So a nice individual comes up to them and says, I can make you a lot of money. Here's what you have to do. You're beautiful. You can do this. That's what happened to me. You're beautiful. Why are you having sex with these men for free? I can make you a lot of money. Like, let me show you how. I'll be there every step of the way. You're going to be safe. I'll keep you safe. I'll give you this. It didn't have to be just money. It'd be nice clothing. I got brand new stuff, brand new things, jewelry, a cell phone back then. We're talking 20 years ago, right? That was lucrative. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're stuck. And I had threats over my head, like, we're going to call your parents. We're going to go to the newspaper. I'm going to call the cops because what you're doing is illegal. Didn't you know that? I'm going to take away all these things. You're not going to have any money anymore. Who pays for that car? All those kind of threats are there. And they're so believable because I was so vulnerable at the time and others are vulnerable at the time. They don't know any better. I didn't know any better. And I believed everything. You want to say anything else? Yeah.
I think you really hit it. I think too, just to kind of piggyback off of that, of just I know we've kind of talked about like just even like emotional safety too for some kids that maybe haven't experienced that. And we're relational beings. We're created for relationships and made for relationships. And when that's very taken advantage of at a young age or hasn't been shown or exemplified in a young person's life, we're seeking that, right? We're seeking that even if we do have those healthy relationships. And so I think for youth too, especially that teenagers are just vulnerable in general, right? And seeking that validation and acceptance. I think there can be, if you haven't been shown that or experienced that yourself, if someone does come along and can provide that sort of emotional safety for you at first, it's easy to, I would imagine, to stay connected with that person who's shown you all those things and has provided not only emotional like safety and security, but has given you physical safety and security too.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, because loneliness is a big thing, not only with youth, but vulnerable adults as well. Think of even the dating apps. They're a nightmare. Never will I go on those again. But it is all about exploitation. It really is.
I think this conversation is also a good reminder too that sometimes I think we can assume that trafficking happens to people who are low income, more marginalized communities, but emotional poverty is how I've heard it described, can happen to anyone, any gender, any socioeconomic class, any location. So it's not just one group. In theory, at one point in their life, anyone could be vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, emotional poverty, I'm glad you mentioned that. And to me, emotional poverty is the lack of connection, affect. It's usually related to growing up in a traumatizing environment where they have been taught to shut down and be numb. And those numb feelings is the only way you can do the things that you're being asked to do and shut off all the other emotions. So emotional poverty, lack of, void of that affect. Many individuals, that's why they use drugs. To stay numb. They want an out-of-mind body experience while these incidents are happening to them, while they're engaging in these labor services. They are shutting off one part of their brain that allows them to feel. Why? Because if they do have that emotional connection, they most likely would attempt suicide or commit suicide or go off the deep end, leading to hospitalizations of some sort or hurting themselves in some sort. So they have to be able to practice that emotional poverty, that avoidance, that being numb in order to survive. It's a survival technique. It really is.
It's well said. So
how do we empower people to be less vulnerable and in turn prevent trafficking and exploitation? It's certainly more than sharing a post on social media during Human Trafficking Prevention Month. So what does real prevention and awareness look like?
Andrea, you want to start?
I think it's a lot of teaching and be an example of, again, healthy relationships. I think, again, trafficking, how I understand it, again, is it's very relational. It's, again, that's very different than, again, someone being snatched off the street or being taken, right? There's a lot of, it's more relational than it is anything else. And so teaching youth and the people around us just healthy relationships, what boundaries look like, what that means too, I think can go a long way, can really empower people and youth especially.
Yeah, relationship health and safety is very important, especially for youth watching how relationships are with others, adults, heavy influence. I think prevention starts in the school. Here in Kent County, we had some school-based prevention at some schools, but not all. I think a nationwide adoption of talking more about online exploitation, the difference between sexting and sextortion, and how it leads to being exploited for human trafficking is really what we need to talk about. There's so many people out there that have the myth that it doesn't happen, like it's not in my backyard kind of thing. But it is. It's like your neighbor next door and you don't even realize it. Actually, it's your kid on the computer or on their phone in your own room and you don't even realize it. Right? And those conversations need to start. And it doesn't mean because we're talking about it, it's going to happen. But there are so many parents and school board members and teachers that believe that. But I feel like human trafficking prevention starts in the school and having those early conversations with kids about stranger danger, but online stranger danger. Do you know this person on the other side you're talking to? What do they want? What are their intentions? And really identifying who safe people are in their lives, and who are not considered safe people. Also identifying like body awareness, right? And body awareness of their emotions. Do I feel like this spidey sense that something's not right? That's your gut intuition. Whether it's you as the community member identifying this within a child or another adult, or it's that child identifying it within their own bodies to say, something doesn't seem right. I need to go to a trusted adult about this situation. Yeah,
absolutely. I think with schools too, just my experience working in schools, it's so important because there's already there's a lot of relationships there too. Again, safe adults that children can go talk to. But they're also the frontline workers of being able to identify if they are suspicious of any sort of abuse or neglect that's happening in a home. I think that can be great prevention work too. It's a really hard thing to happen and have to identify, but that can be part of prevention work too, is being able to identify when they, even as educators, feel like their spidey senses are going off if something doesn't seem right with this child, and maybe they can't put their finger on it, but they can at least identify like something's not right here, and opening that conversation with children.
So we've talked about schools, obviously, but who else do you see as essential partners in prevention, and what role should schools or other educators, churches, businesses, healthcare providers, any other community organization play in prevention?
Well, you just mentioned them all. Churches, healthcare providers, legal, resources, hotels, motels in this area, restaurant, business owners, massage parlors, is all about just understanding the indicators. But also, as a community, we need to take an approach of identifying and eradicating the vulnerabilities that lead to human trafficking in the first place. One is loneliness, right? So faith-based community or church-based community can really help with inviting those individuals in and having awareness about human trafficking in the first place is that vulnerability of loneliness, feeling not a part of being wanted. And that church and faith-based community can fill that void.
Yeah.
But first they need to just have a general understanding of what human trafficking and exploitation is. So that really starts with it. The healthcare professional, I'm a healthcare professional. It really starts with understanding that most human trafficking victims at one point, as a matter of fact, there was a study done that 87.8%, love the 8%, went into, met with a healthcare professional at one point during their victimization. And furthermore, that 68.3%, love the 3%, right? Went into the emergency department during their victimization. And the caveat is that no one identified that they were being trafficked.
Wow.
And so understanding those indicators, why they are there, why they're presenting services, and for me, and what I teach the most is to look beyond your first impression of what this individual is. You might be like, they're a drug abuser, they're a prostitute. Those labels are very, very condescending and could stop individual from getting further assistance. Same thing is, why can't they leave that boyfriend, that girlfriend, the intimate partner violence, the domestic violence that happens in the home? Oh, the poor kid, he's just running away. Okay, with further probing and assessment questions, screening questions, just asking, do you feel safe right now? Who is that person to you? Is that person make you nervous for any reason? You just kind of identify like the white elephant in the room, the indicator that you're identifying, and you ask about that. And you just show genuine interest instead of turning a blind eye and thinking it doesn't happen in our community.
Yeah.
I think you hit on it really well too, Katie. And I know you teach these trainings as trauma-informed trainings too. And I think churches could benefit from that as well, of like just being mindful of who's stepping into their faith community. And again, creating that sense of community for people and that sense of belonging. But same with hospital staff and any sort of care provider that may come across someone that's maybe working with vulnerable populations, being trauma informed and being mindful and maybe not asking outwards, but inwardly asking what happened to this person that led to this point and what's going on behind the scenes versus, like Katie said, like, you know what I mean, kind of ignoring it and passing along or getting frustrated with like, why can't they, move past this like boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever and staying in this or, but just being curious and just asking what happened to that person before, what led to this point.
What happened versus why are you like this?
Yes.
The stigmatizing approach to questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to shift gears just a little bit to treatment and continuing support for survivors because, unfortunately, people have experienced exploitation and trafficking. So focusing on awareness and prevention isn't quite enough. We do also still have to provide treatment, ongoing support for people who have experienced it. So they need more than prevention at this point. Treatment for the trauma that comes with trafficking and healing isn't just about simply escaping the danger, or maybe not so simply escaping the danger. It's rebuilding trust and identity and stability and kind of repairing all these other vulnerabilities we've talked about. So what does holistic, trauma-informed treatment and care really need to include?
I'll take that.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Holistic. So that means whole of person. Trauma-informed care versus trauma treatment is two different things.
Okay.
So trauma-informed care is led by principles that put the individual first by believing that trauma has happened or can happen to anyone. So if you have that belief when interacting with anybody in the community, that is considered trauma informed, right? It just means that you respect, You provide opportunity for a special spot and a private place if needed to talk about what is happening to them. You offer space. You offer I teach trauma-informed care tips for those who work with human trafficking victims and survivors. So there's so much that goes into trauma-informed care. It's being open. It's being vulnerable. It's about planting seeds of hope. It's about meeting that person where they're at if they don't want to leave, and then maybe talk about safety planning versus rescuing. The need to rescue is so ingrained in some of the helping professionals, and they might not ever leave their trafficking situation. But, offering things like the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 888-373-7888. I can repeat that, 888-373-7888. You can call with them, or you can provide the number discreetly if needed. Trauma treatment is different. So trauma treatment is by trained mental health licensed professionals like myself, where we go over endure extensive training in the treatment of trauma. And then one step further, this is something that I also teach, is trauma treatment that's evidence-based for working specifically with those who experience human trafficking. And before addressing that human trafficking trauma treatment, most individuals need to go through an acute stabilization period that you were just mentioning, right? So are their basic needs met?
Yeah.
Like housing, mental health, detox, and are they open to trusting an individual? And I usually talk about a phased approach to treatment with survivors of human trafficking. And we can put my contact information maybe in this podcast just
absolutely.
to talk further, because I could do a whole nother podcast on that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, just to add to that, something that I appreciate too is not only the talk therapy, and again with individuals and making sure those basic needs are met, but then the mental health treatment as well. And I think holistic and then whole body, thinking of that is we offer for some of our residents here at Wedgwood, through this grant that I'm overseeing, we can offer equine therapy and things like that, or trauma-informed yoga or music therapy, just different, I call them different modes of therapy. There are different modes of healing and modes of therapy, because people might not be ready to fully speak what they've experienced yet. But they might be able to start talking if they're petting a horse, or they are, they're with animals, or they're out in nature, or they're moving their body. That's holistic in my mind too, and holistic healing for people.
That's right. I usually include those in a phase 2 approach.
Yes.
And it can be married. I mean, even for myself today, I still participate in hot yoga because stress is a big risk factor for myself. And so I identified that exercising and hot yoga specifically really helps with that. And that's something that I learned a long time ago, and I continue to incorporate it. So, and that's part of recovery. Another part of recovery, I would say, is community integration. Maybe family reunification, maybe, if it's safe to do so.
Yeah.
If it's not, that's another story. But then also identifying higher power, maybe something more above them. Sometimes individuals' faith and spirituality is what keeps them alive during their trafficking situation. Yeah. It's the only thing, plants of or seeds of hope of their belief systems. Even though their belief systems might be challenged due to the darkness of what human trafficking exists, it doesn't matter. They're strengthening that faith and towards their recovery process is something that is very important. Just knowing that there's a higher meaning of getting out of their trafficking situation.
So based on how you guys have talked about this so far and your work with the West Michigan Human Trafficking Coalition, it's pretty obvious that ending human trafficking is a community-wide effort. It's going to take all of us, everybody. But what services or supports are still missing in our community for survivors, and what do you think would make the biggest difference? I know that's kind of a big question.
It is, yeah.
It is. I think that one thing is more education across the whole community. I think it's also more, and this is what we're trying to do with the coalition, is more collaboration among different service providers and healthcare professionals, law enforcement. We already have that, but we could strengthen it,
sure.
right? And so there's collaboration. And so like we're not working in silos of our services, but instead integrating services to meet missing gaps and needs, right? One thing we need in this community that has nothing to do with human trafficking is affordable housing, affordable rent.
Yeah.
There are so many times that individuals are being exploited due to housing insecurities and food insecurities. That is just one thing that as a community we could really work on. The other services in general, like we have different community providers, but are we talking to each other about the missing gaps? And another thing that I'm pretty passionate about is, again, the schools, having education in the schools. There is none.
Yeah.
There is none.
I mean, it's a captive audience for learning, so.
Yeah.
I would agree with all that. Yeah. I think housing was going to be my number one answer too. And even emergency and safe shelter. I know that we certainly have that in West Michigan for sure. And there's a lot of great organizations that are doing amazing things. But again, like Katie said, just being able to be collaborative and communicate with each other of like, what are we missing, and working together towards just, helping each other out and helping people who are in need.
And while simultaneously like addressing the call it the symptom or like the current need of someone, but then also addressing the root causes of things. So in the case of human trafficking, I suppose we could talk about how we need to provide all this mental health treatment and all these extra therapies and community engagement now, but then also providing stable housing and affordable housing to address the cause moving forward too. So it's kind of a holistic approach for the person, but also for the whole system.
Yeah. And community.
And the community and employment too, right? So in that National Survivor study that you talked about, one thing, there was a quotes throughout there about different survivors. And one said, why would I go to a 9-to-5 job making $12 an hour minimum wage when I can make 100 times that in 1 hour? And that transition to a position of employment from a 9-to-5 job just becomes overwhelming. They also have hard time identifying what is this gap in employment and coming up with the reasons. Well, you can't say I was just trafficked for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And so working with employment specialists, vocational rehabilitation specialists, Michigan Rehabilitation Services on how to become gainfully employed is also something that is missing in West Michigan.
Yeah. How can faith communities or spiritual support play a role in the long-term healing and belonging for survivors, if at all? I know we talked a little bit about how they can be involved in the prevention and awareness aspect, but how do you think it plays into the support and long-term healing?
I think churches and faith communities have a wealth of resources within their congregation. And so I think too, it's churches, faith-based communities, just having that conversation. How can we serve our neighbors well? I know my own church does. They open their doors, I think, once a week to serve homeless in the community, to providing just different resources, clothing, food, that kind of thing, and just meeting those basic needs and opening their doors. I think that, and then offering, again, helping people apply for jobs if they need, that kind of thing, I think can go a long ways too.
I think also connecting individuals with part of their recovery process with others that they know that are involved in their own mental health or substance abuse recovery, doing like a warm handoff with the other church members within their community, getting them involved, personally inviting them to attend different things, Bible studies, support groups, etc. Making a phone call if they miss something to be like, you're missed. Please come back. Hey, we missed you on Sunday. I know you might think this is off-putting that I'm calling you, but we really care.
It's being intentional.
It is being intentional and inviting, and therefore a sense of belonging, again, is what can prevent that vulnerability to wanting to be desired and wanted in an unhealthy way.
I think you summed it up really well at the beginning, just loving our neighbors well.
Yeah, I like that.
It's that simple, really, she said, knowing it's a totally complex process, but... it can feel a little overwhelming sometimes to hear about a huge, heartbreaking issue like human trafficking and feel like you are just one person and how can I possibly make an impact in this giant systemic issue? So how can listeners take a step today toward being a part of the solution?
Okay, so first of all, we already talked about the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Please put that in your cell phone. You can text them, and you can also call them related to suspected human trafficking, but it's not about reporting. It's also about finding resources. Another thing is, again, looking beyond your first impressions, understanding what human trafficking really is and really what's not, debunking those myths about human trafficking to others within the community setting, having a general awareness. You don't have to be subject matter experts. That's what we are. You don't have to be a subject matter expert in anti-human trafficking work. Asking questions to people, listening to that spidey sense, bystander intervention, which means like you're watching something happening, and even though you don't want to intervene, it's okay to intervene because that might be a plug to helping somebody out. Some other things, if you want to get involved, you're a professional, interested more in volunteering, we have the West Michigan Human Trafficking Council to join and to understand. We're actually going to do an information sharing about our council, and then it will be ongoing to these information sharing, even past January. So
we want our community to be involved in that too. What I usually tell people too, if I'm doing presentations again, just continue to educate yourself on, like what Katie said, just like what is human trafficking, what is it not? And then I challenge people too of like, what are your strengths and what are your abilities? What resources do you have that you can help serve vulnerable populations? So I think that's the biggest thing too, is again, looking at yourself of what can I bring to the table in a realistic and practical way too.
I'm going to make sure that we've linked Katie's information and Andrea, the Manasseh Project's information, if people are interested in joining the coalition or having some training or education. And we'll put the National Human Trafficking Hotline number in there too, so everyone can access the resources and look at what their next step might be. What is giving you hope in your work and about the future of our community?
I want to just give big kudos to the West Michigan Human Trafficking Coalition. We right now have a dedicated staff among multiple cross-sector of professionals within the community, both law enforcement, service provider, healthcare, legal. It's great. We are coming together. We're making big changes in this community. Our work is about identifying not only those who are experiencing human trafficking, but provide the services, the legal interventions if needed, support, again, just being able to collaborate. So I think that's definitely a strength, and I'm really excited about our future within the coalition.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just in general, what gives me hope is people care and they hear about it and realize, again, the complexities of it and what's really happening to people in our community, and people genuinely care and want to do something about it. That gives me hope.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. This was such an important conversation. Thank you both so much for being advocates for survivors and working together to protect the vulnerable. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
We'll have links in the episode description for more information about ways you can get involved in prevention and advocacy with Wedgwood's Manasseh Project, the West Michigan Human Trafficking Coalition, and other resources. Together, we can create a brighter future for everyone. Stay hopeful, stay helpful, and let's have another coffee break soon.